If you're Canadian businesses and we're being told, buy Canada, excuse me, are you really buying Canada if they're using labor that isn't even from Canada? This is the twilight zone insanity that we are actually living in right now. The gloves came off today as Conservatives demanded the Liberals scrap the temporary foreign worker program entirely, blaming it for record youth unemployment. Just a day earlier, Minister Patty Hajdu dodged questions on the jobless rate, insisting there's no single cause. Conservatives fired back, pointing to a surge in temporary foreign work approvals, even at household brands like Tim Hortons as proof Ottawa is shutting young Canadians out of work. Who's telling the truth? Let's take a look.
My name is Michelle Rempel-Garner, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Calgary-Nose Hill and the Conservative immigration critic. I'm joined today by MP Garnet Jenis, the Conservative Shadow Minister for Employment, to help make an important announcement that will give some hope back to young Canadians. And boy, do they ever need some hope. Many young Canadians can't imagine buying a home or starting a family without a good-paying job. Yet they can't secure those jobs without experience, which they can't gain because they can't find an entry-level job. It wasn't always this way, though. Once upon a time, not long ago, if you were a young Canadian, you could earn vital skills in an entry-level job and earn enough to pay for school while saving. In return, employers would benefit from a skilled, productive domestic labour workforce. But that social contract has been broken by the Liberals. Canada is experiencing a staggering youth unemployment crisis. And all summer, we heard countless gut-punching stories about young Canadians who have put out hundreds of resumes without getting as much as a single callback. Behind me are some of those young people. We have Sana Shahid, who's worked in quality assurance and has not been able to find work in over a year. We have Aruma Dana, who completed security guard training, yet still can't find permanent work. And we also have Gabrielle James, who completed specialized training in analysis and reporting, and yet can't find stable employment. These folks want to work. They've made the right decisions, they did their training, but they still can't get a leg up. Things are so bad that 1 in 5 students are returning to school this week who looked for a job this summer and didn't find one, in large part because they're competing with temporary foreign workers for scarce entry-level jobs. All this is happening while the cost of housing is so high that many young Canadians aren't thinking about buying a house. And they wonder how they're going to get seen by a doctor if they need health care. And where have the Liberals been on this issue this summer? Absolutely nowhere. Nowhere. But thankfully, Conservatives have worked all summer, and today we are announcing the first in a series of major reforms that we will be demanding from the Liberal government to make sure that Canadian jobs go to Canadians. Unlike the Liberals, Conservatives aren't afraid to tackle the toughest issues facing young Canadians and Canadian workers head-on, including Canada's utterly broken immigration system. And now, to make this very hopeful announcement, it's my great pleasure to introduce the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Michelle Rempel and Garnet Jenis, for your hard work on behalf of Canadians. We're here to bring hope to the hopeless. We have behind us some very talented and hardworking people who cannot get jobs here in Canada. And let's be honest, young people today form what I call Generation Screwed. Let's look at the situation for this generation. It is the first generation that cannot afford a home in Canadian history. And now, the double gut punch. They have the highest, or the worst employment numbers of any group of young people since the late 1990s. So you can't get a job, and even if you did have a job, you can never buy a home after 10 years of Liberal government. The Liberals doubled housing costs. They unleashed crime and chaos in our communities with their soft laws. They broke our immigration system by allowing too many, too fast, too easily to come into the country. And they have destroyed our economy by pushing investment out of our country. Now, Mark Carney promised that he would be different. He has been worse than Justin Trudeau in almost every objective measurement. Let's go through the promises. He promised to build, baby, build. Well, far from doubling home building as he promised, home building is expected to drop by 13% according to his own housing agency. As for major national projects, 5 months in, and there's not a single national project that Mr. Carney has even identified, much less permitted, much less having shovels in the ground. Not one pipeline, not one mine, not one major expansion of a port. All we have is meetings, offices, new bureaucracies, new high-paid big shots with big salaries who have thus far achieved absolutely nothing. Crime continues to rage on our streets, with Mr. Carney keeping in place all of the catch-and-release Liberal laws. And Mr. Carney has kept all of Justin Trudeau's immigration numbers, which means the system gets worse and worse and worse. The time has come for decisive action. We have major problems in our job market. Let's look at the facts here. The unemployment rate for those aged 15 to 24 is now 14.6%. The employment rate, the share of young people who are employed, is at its lowest level in over a quarter century outside of the pandemic. 1.6 million Canadians were unemployed in July, 7.4% increase in unemployment insurance requests since Mr. Carney took office. Almost 400,000 Canadians have been continually searching for work for over 2 years, the highest share of long-term unemployment since 1998. There are 16,000 more people unemployed in Ontario than there were in the Great Recession. Ontario has seen a massive increase in job losses and a massive decrease in home building. Nearly 75% of temporary foreign workers that come into the country are for low-wage positions, which means they compete with working class and young people that ultimately drive down wages and drive away jobs. Tim Hortons has hired an unimaginable 1,131% more temporary foreign workers in the last 4 years. In the first half of this year alone, the TFWP program has imported 74% more low-skilled labor than in all of 2015. The time has come for decisive action to stop the Liberals from using our immigration system to pad the pockets of corporate elites and other insiders at the expense of Canadian jobs. Again, the principle is very simple. The principle is very simple. Canadian jobs for Canadian workers. Canada first, Canada always. That's why Conservatives are calling on the Carney government to permanently scrap the temporary foreign worker program and to stop issuing visas for any new temporary foreign workers coming into the country. This proposal, existing permits would be wound down until the program is entirely eliminated. Canadian jobs will go to Canadian workers first. It's time that Mr. Carney took the job seriously of repairing the damage that his party has done. Unfortunately, the immigration minister who destroyed the program and caused this mess is now Mark Carney's justice minister. You can believe it. He's now gone from creating a housing crisis as housing minister, an immigration crisis as immigration minister, to creating a crime crisis as justice minister. It's the same Liberal team with the same Liberal results, just a different face who's even worse than the last one.
Okay, so that's where our first break is. I wanted to kind of get all of that in there and skipped a bit just so we could get into the meat of this. So, is Pierre lying when he says that youth unemployment is at crazy highs? Well, let's see what the data says. So, youth unemployment is rising among 3 age brackets. and you can see where things were in 2019, 2022, and 2025. There's not really much point in looking at 2020 or 2021 because that was the COVID years and that was just an unmitigated disaster. But look at the people that are 15 to 19 years of age and look at the unemployment. Like, that is staggering, folks. Here's another chart that actually breaks it down so you can actually see by men and women what the unemployment rate is. And, you know, you can infer a few things from this. Looks like identity politics and sexism might be actually at play here, because you can see those aged 15 to 19, you have a almost 6% increase in unemployment between men and women in 2025 when they're aged 15 to 19. And the change from 2019 to 2025 is 9% for men and 5.6% for women. That's crazy, folks. Age 20 to 24, same thing. Men are at 15% unemployment and women are at 11.2. Again, 4.2 and 2.3% increase from 2019 respectively. And then 25 to 2029, 9.3 and 8.1%. Those are big numbers, folks. Big, big, big numbers. This is how long it actually takes people to find work. And this is on average, folks. So people that are 15 to 19 years of age took 2 months on average in 2019 to find a job. Now it takes upwards of 4 months to find a job in 2025 for that age gap. And look at the increase across all of the different age brackets. 97% change from 2019 for the lowest age bracket, then 80.5%, and then 53.8%. This is a problem, folks. So no, Pierre is not making this stat up. This is an actual stat. An actual stat. And it's funny because Patty Hajdu, she actually had a press conference yesterday, and she was trying to gloss over this, and she was challenged. So, you know, this youth unemployment rate is, and she didn't even need the guy to finish the question. She's like, yeah, I know. And then goes on to make kind of a ridiculous statement about this. Check this out.
Can you comment before you do that the numbers for youth unemployment are?
Yeah, as I said in my speech, we know that youth unemployment is rising, and it's actually a very concerning trend. And although there's no one single reason why, the fact that it's going up is significantly concerning.
Yeah. You don't have to say it. Youth unemployment is rising, and it's a concerning trend. A concerning trend. You're talking like this is new, Patty. It's not new. How do we know it's not new? Because of the data on your own government website. That's how we know it's not new. Folks, this is data from Statistics Canada. And you can see this is youth unemployment rate from September of 2023 all the way up until May of 2025. And it's gotten worse, by the way, since May. Look at this trend. This is a very, very concerning trend indeed. But the Liberals have known about this for over 2 years. Over 2 years. And you can see that's that 14.6% that Pierre Poilievre is talking about. And then she goes on to say, well, you know, there's no single cause. There's no single cause. All right. So evidently, the banker who knows how the world works, as he keeps condescendingly telling everybody, as he keeps telling everybody to look inside themselves, as the guy who loves to remind everyone that he's the governor of the Bank of Canada and he was the governor of the Bank of England. Let me explain some economics to you. There's something called supply and demand. When you have a massively overly available workforce, that's your supply, there's not much demand for that workforce from the actual businesses. So when you bring in all of these temporary foreign workers who are going to be making a lot less than the average Canadian, Well, guess what? You've just supplied all of these employers with cheap labor. Why are they going to hire Canadians? Now, these businesses, they don't get a free pass, because if you're Canadian businesses and we're being told, buy Canada, excuse me, are you really buying Canada if they're using labor that isn't even from Canada? This is the Twilight Zone insanity that we are actually living in right now. In that a lot of these Canadian businesses are using non-Canadian labor, yet we're being told to buy Canadian. Like, what do you say? What do you say to this stuff? And Ottawa's the one that approves it, folks. That's how this works. The businesses apply to actually have these temporary foreign workers, and then Ottawa approves it. It's insane. Anyway, Ezra Levant chose to ask Pierre a question about the temporary foreign worker program, and it led to an interesting exchange.
Hi, Ezra Levant from Rebel News. I thought it was very interesting about Booster Juice paying $36 an hour to a foreign worker. And I think a lot of Canadians don't know how pervasive this is, and that's an outrageous anecdote. I don't think the Liberals are going to accept your advice here, so I think your reforms wouldn't be able to bite until you become Prime Minister if that happens. But I think there is something you could do in the meantime. And let me ask you if you would consider this. I'm actually just doing some brainstorming here. Would you consider shining a spotlight using your bully pulpit on the worst offenders? For example, maybe a company that really wraps itself in the Canadian flag, like Tim Hortons. Would you consider having an event outside of Tim Hortons? Would you consider writing to the board of directors of RBI and the Brazilian hedge fund? And I guess what I'm saying is there's no downside to these companies hiring foreign workers. But if there was a PR downside, if patriotic Canadians said, this is enough. I notice in the UK there's a lot of people waving British and English flags. It's their response to immigration crises. Would you consider naming and shaming in the public domain abusers of the TFW program?
Yes, and thank you for the question. Michelle Rempel has already begun the process. She's been publishing the most egregious cases of corporate elites profiting by shutting Canadians out of jobs in favor of low-wage temporary foreign workers. And Michelle, do you want to add anything to that?
No, thanks for the question, Ezra. It's absolutely egregious that these companies expect that they can just maximize corporate profits on the backs of and at the expense of Canadian youth. It's a practice that has to end. We've been naming and shaming them all week. I want to thank my team for finding those examples, but I encourage Canadians to go and look for themselves. There's been websites that have been set up so that people can see what these companies are doing. But the more important thing is, Ezra, that the Liberals are letting them do this.
Yeah, they are. And that's what I was just saying. Ottawa approves this stuff. They know full well who's doing it. And when I started considering that they know full well who's doing it, I started to wonder, hey, wouldn't they actually have a website that tells us who they approved these temporary foreign worker permits for? Well, turns out the answer is yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is just one example of a spreadsheet that has thousands, and I mean thousands of companies that use the temporary foreign worker program. And you can look these up. The links are in the description, and we've included 2 links, just 2, of dozens and dozens and dozens of spreadsheets that show you tens of thousands. In the latest spreadsheet that we see, there's 15,000 companies across Canada that are actually using the temporary foreign worker program. Big brands like Best Western, Marriott, A&W, Boston Pizza, Pizza, KFC, McDonald's, Tim Hortons. It goes on and on and on. Maple Leaf Foods. Maple Leaf frickin' Foods, folks. So there are thousands of companies across Canada that are using the temporary foreign worker program. And if there's thousands of companies, that means there's tens of thousands of workers that are actually being used here. Tens of thousands of workers that should be Canadian, that should be going to Canadian youth, should be going to Canadian, whomever the age bracket. We have an unemployment rate that's climbing in Canada. So when the Liberals say, oh, well, you know, it's not tied to immigration, it's not tied to immigration. Okay. Sure, it's not. When you have temporary foreign workers that are literally taking these jobs away from our youth, entry-level jobs, jobs that prepare our young adults to actually enter the workforce later, to understand what the expectations of the real world are, to be able to start saving for post-secondary school, for trades, to try and start saving for a new home, which they're probably never going to buy. That's what they deserve. They deserve that because that's what the government is supposed to provide them. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can take a look at your heart's content to these at these spreadsheets, and you can see them quarter by quarter by quarter of the new positions that they're asking for, and it's something to see, folks. It really is something to see, and this is something that I think a lot of Canadians can get behind. So if you want to know who not to buy from, who isn't exactly on that Buy Canada list, you can take a look at these spreadsheets and you can do some filters on your shopping.